Jennifer and Adriana Wicks were last seen on March 25th, 2004 at the Benton residence, Jennifer's boyfriend's family's house in Springfield, Tennessee. On that day, Jennifer's father, Michael Wicks, spoke with Jennifer on the phone, making him the last relative to have contact with her. Joey, Jennifer's boyfriend at the time, and his parents are allegedly the last known individuals to have seen Jennifer and Adriana. Since March 2004, there have been no confirmed sightings of Jennifer or her daughter since they were last seen at the Benton residence. This has been a heart-wrenching journey for Jennifer's family, who have been tirelessly searching for answers. Over the years, many people have come forward with information that has led to Jennifer's family to believe that foul play was involved. The behavior of the last people to have seen Jennifer and her daughter also raised suspicions. Casey, Jennifer's sister, has pieced together in great deal all of the relevant information surrounding her sister and niece's disappearance, a task that has taken a toll on her emotionally. I interviewed Casey so she could go over in detail what was happening in Jennifer and her daughter's lives before they went missing and what happened that fateful week in March before their disappearances. There is a $25,000 reward for new information in this case. Call the Robertson County Sheriff's Department at 615-384-7981 if you know anything. Also, please follow Justice for Jennifer and Adriana Wicks on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, which I have linked in the show notes. There's also a GoFundMe you can donate to help with the investigation and a petition you can sign which supports the search of the Benton property. Your support and involvement are crucial in our efforts to find Jennifer and Adriana. Here's part one of my interview with Casey. I want to start with you telling me about your sister Jennifer. What is she like? What personality traits stand out, both physical and otherwise?
Yeah, so I always like to tell everyone that obviously it's been 20 years and the trauma behind, everything that we've been through really, really affects memory, especially after 20 years. So when people ask me that question, I'm thinking about her memory, and how I thought about her as a child. So she was my oldest sister. I'm the baby, and we have a middle sister, Heather, too. And Jennifer and I were very close, even though we were 6 years apart. She was born in 82. I was born in 88. Yeah. So we were 6 years apart, but we were kind of closer. I just followed her around everywhere. I thought she was so cool. Obviously, she was beautiful, in my opinion. And I just always describe her as kind of like an Indian princess, like Pocahontas, just real natural beauty, real long, dark, flowing hair, dark features. She had deep, dark brown eyes and, just all of those dark features, dark skin, just real natural, didn't wear a lot of makeup or anything like that. And I don't know, I just always looked up to her in a way. And my mom tells me that she was always just kind of she treated me like a baby doll. So she was kind of like a caretaker figure for me too. She helped my mom with me a lot. And just describing her personality, I would say, before I watched some home videos in the last couple weeks, I would tell you she is a strong-willed, silent type kind of presence. She would just kind of keep to herself. A lot of her friends in high school would describe her that way too. She wasn't really outgoing or bubbly, that kind of personality. She was more, intrinsic and artistic, and she liked to write and read poetry and write poetry, and she would write a lot of letters and whatnot. And she just was more of that vibe. She was just kind of soft and quiet and strong and quiet is how I would describe her. And then recently I watched some home videos that I was able to get my hands on from my mom, and I heard her voice again. And just hearing her voice, it was much more feminine than I would describe her, like soft and feminine. And I would always just kind of think of her as like a tomboy. Like she wasn't very girly. Like her style was tomboyish, and she was outdoorsy, you know. So I always felt like she was more of that. But when I heard her voice, like it just sounded very young and, you know, more feminine than I remember. So again, the 20 years comes into play, and I'm playing based off of like my childhood memory of her, you know, that strong Indian princess type. And then hearing her voice the other day, I was just like I didn't know her that well. I know that sounds weird, but I mean, I was a kid then, you know. So as an adult looking back at these videos, like she just seemed so much younger and sweeter and softer than I actually remembered her to be.
In those videos that you watched, were there any moments that stood out for you that you could either recall or really, you know, impacted you in a really heavy way?
Yeah, a few. A lot of the video that I was looking through was right before their disappearance in 2003. And so Jennifer and Adriana had come to Las Vegas, outside Las Vegas, where my mom and I lived at the time. And so they weren't like childhood videos from like our family Christmases or anything, which I think we have those somewhere. I just haven't found them yet. But yes, there's a few, like just the way she was a mother to Adriana. Like I was the one behind the camera. You know, we had camcorders, and so I was the one videoing her giving Adriana a bath after a day that we spent in the desert looking for wild horses. And Jennifer was obsessed with horses. Anything outdoors, but mostly horses. She even worked at a stable whenever she was younger. And so we went out looking for wild horses, and we were at home at our apartment at the end of the day. She's giving Adriana a bath, you know, and I could just, as a mother myself now, you know, just see how nurturing and caring she was. You know, she lathered up her hands with soap in the bathtub, you know, the baby's playing with the water and looking at herself in the reflection of like the faucet little cover thing, you know, and Jennifer blows her a bubble and like through her hands, and she just hearing her say like Adriana, you know, and just the way she was so nurturing and took care of her. Adriana was just her whole life. I mean, that just really stood out to me, how they were just kind of like one, you know. It wasn't like, I don't know how to describe that any better, but they were just one. Adriana was literally like a part of her, you know. And so it was good to see those videos and just see us spending time together then. You know, there was another one where I was in the floor on all fours, you know, just messing around with Adriana. We were playing, and she would ride on my back, and I would pretend like a horse, and I would ride her around a little bit. You know, she was not even 2 at the time. And you know, I was just so careful with her, like her gonna fall off my back, and my sister was on the couch, and we were just like spending like normal sister time together. And it's just like, that's a hard thing to see too, you know, things that like after that time, like we didn't really get a lot of anymore, especially after their disappearance.
Can you tell me about what was going on in both Jennifer and Adriana's life in late 2003 and early 2004 before they go missing? I understand they were living with Jennifer's boyfriend Joey and family at the time.
Yeah, that's right. So Jennifer and Joey started dating in the summer of 2003. So the same summer that I'm kind of telling you these memories, they came to visit us in Vegas. So they met through my cousin, and it was one of his friends, and they met. They started dating. Things are going well. My mom, my stepdad, and I lived in Vegas at the time, and we had moved out there. She had gotten a job offer for a big box store manager. And so we moved out there, and Jennifer come to visit us, and she had met this guy. Everything was going well. And then one day my mom just out of the blue gets a call that Jennifer is frantic. She had just been dropped off at her grandmother's house by Joey's mom, and he had, I don't know if you can put this in your podcast. I like to tell the backstory, but he had, taken out a gun. I don't want to say pulled a gun. It almost sounds like he's like pointing it at her, but she described it as he had taken out a gun and was very like unstable and distraught. I don't know what was happening between them. And they, I guess, were fighting, and he had taken out a gun and threatened himself and Jennifer and Adriana, and Joey had his mom take Jennifer to her grandparents that day. And when Jennifer called my mom and told her about what had happened that day, my mom was like, okay, that's it. Like, we're on our way back. I mean, I'm talking within probably a 2-week time period, we were back living in Cross Plains, Tennessee. And so that's kind of the backstory. There was they had broken up. Obviously, we moved back. Jennifer and Adriana moved in with us in late 2003, probably like October-ish. They were living in a basement apartment with us, and we lived upstairs. And it was nice, 2-bedroom, like living area, bathroom sort of deal. And everything was going well, but Jennifer and Joey started talking again. And the end of 2003, just a couple days before Christmas, we had a huge thing happen at our house where Jennifer decided that they were getting back together, and she and Adriana were leaving and going with Joey. And he was not supposed to be at our house. We did not approve of that relationship, just knowing what had happened before we moved back from Vegas and the whole gun situation. And so he wasn't supposed to be there, but he walked right into our house, went downstairs. Jennifer had packed up all of hers and the baby's things, and he was carrying them up the stairs. And, my mom goes down into the basement and is like, Jennifer, don't leave, don't go back with him. It's not a good situation for y'all to be in. She had told us that there were drugs over at their house, and there were weapons within arm's length anywhere in the house. It's not a good environment for her or the baby, really. And so we're trying to stop her from going, and my mom's like, Joey, like, if you love her, you need to do better. Like, this is not a good environment for them. You can't take my daughter. And he just looks my mom dead in the eyes and says, you don't have a daughter anymore, bitch. And I just remember that detail so vividly. I was standing right there, and you could just see the look in his eyes that day. So when we talk about their relationship leading up, the end of 2003 and 2004, like, there are these kind of red flags, if you will, like, happening throughout, and we're like, I wouldn't call it any type of abusive relationship. My family's talked about it in the past and talked about maybe like a little bit of a control thing, an isolation and control thing where, he was taking Jennifer and she wasn't really speaking to family as much, at least our side of the family, especially after that day that I just described, where he said that things got heated that day. There was a lot of yelling, things got physical, like physically trying to stop them from leaving. We locked Joey out of the house. He kicked down our front door, like literally off of the hinges, laying in the floor. There was a police report and everything filed that day for that day. I called 911 and took Adriana into the back room. She was just so distraught with everything going on and crying and all the yelling and fighting. And Jennifer and Joey left Adriana there. And Jennifer came back a little bit later that day with Joey's mom to pick up Adriana. Of course, we couldn't keep her. She had to be with her mom. But, that's just a day like burned into our memory. Like, if we could have done more, if she would have listened, if, just all of the if, of course, ran through our heads that day. But after that day, they moved with Joey into like this barn shed, like the kind of barn that you see at like Lowe's and Home Depot or Tractor Supply, like a big one though, like probably, 15 by 18 or something like that, like big enough for the inside of it to be like a studio apartment, if you will, like a very, like, not a nice one. Like, there was drywall on the wall, but it hadn't been mudded in and taped and like finished or painted or anything. It was just literally nailed onto the wall. There was even like a plywood wall on one side. There was carpet in there, but not like installed, just in there. You know, they had run electricity out there and had a fridge and a computer and a couch and bed and things like that. So it's pretty big in there, but just like a complete disaster of a mess. And this is where Joey and his friends would all come and hang out. A lot of his friends talk about hanging out at the barn, the party barn is what they would call it. And they would, you know, young kids come there to party, drink and smoke and things like that. And so the baby to be living there, I mean, we were just really trying not to have Jennifer and Adriana go there, but that's where they lived after that happened at the end of 2003, and we're dead in the middle of winter. You know, and in Tennessee, it gets really cold for our winters. And so because it was getting so cold, they moved in with Joey's parents. And the barn was, I guess I've never really described that to people, but it wasn't really like right outside their back door. It wasn't like a shed right outside of a house. It was through the woods. Like there was like a path that was, you know, that they used a lot. So it was really beaten down. So there was a trail over to a barn, like on another family member's property. So it was kind of a walk through the woods. But whenever it got really cold, they moved in with Joey's parents, and it was like a small ranch-style house, a little brick house, 3-bedroom, 2 baths, kitchen, living room. Excuse me. And there was a room for his parents, you know, and then there was a room for Joey and Jennifer to stay in, and then there was a spare third room that they kind of makeshifted into Adriana's room. I know Joey had built her like a little toddler bed, and he had built her like a little wooden rocking horse and things for that Christmas too, that we have photos of. But just tell you that so you can see like his side of it. Like he and people have told us that know him very well that he really cared about Jennifer and Adriana, really loved them, that they were, you know, just really deep into their relationship. But whenever they moved in with his parents, things just started to become more tense. You know, just living with someone who's not your actual relative, even that sometimes can get tense. But Jennifer started to come around us again and start talking to us in February. My memory best serves that she started coming around my 16th birthday. My mom and I share a birthday on February 22nd, and it was my sweet 16, and we had invited some of my friends over and all the family and everything. I just remember Joey dropping her off on the corner or on the curb of our house because, again, he wasn't allowed there. And especially after what had happened in December with him busting down our door, and we were in the middle of a court case for that, for vandalism and whatnot and trespassing. And so she came and said hello, brought the baby to say hello for our birthdays. And that's really the last memory, like vivid memory that I have of them coming around. And then, of course, shortly after that, we get into March, and that is the month of their disappearance, March 2004.
Let's talk about the days and week leading up to their disappearance. Like, what was happening at that time in March of 2004?
So, you know, Jennifer was living with Joey and his parents, and that week, my mom got a call kind of late. It would have been the 22nd, Monday, March 22nd, 2004. Late in the evening, probably around 11 o'clock at night, 10, 11 o'clock at night, my mom gets a call from Jennifer. She's at the Benton home. Adriana is sick. She's running fever. She's very lethargic, not feeling well at all, and she's crying whenever she goes to the bathroom. She can't pee. She's saying it hurts when she pees. And so Jennifer's like, Mom, no one here will take me to the doctor, and I feel like she needs to go. But Joey's mom worked in the medical field. I don't know specifically if she was a nurse or not, but she has that background and actually she worked at a hospital at the time and retired from one. So she kind of has that background, and I guess Jennifer had talked to her about what was going on, and she was like, she's fine, you know, like she'll be fine. But Jennifer called my mom and was talking to her, and pretty late at night, and just, I guess, had that mother's intuition and was like, Mom, she needs to go to the doctor. No one here will take me. And Jennifer didn't have a car. She didn't have her own phone. She didn't have a bank account. She didn't have any money or a job or anything like that. Just important to note all of those things and why she's saying no one will take me, because she would have to ask them, to either use their vehicle or someone take me, and was using their phone as well that night. So my mom is like, okay, do you want me to come and get you? And she's like, no, they don't like you. Don't come here. Don't want anything to happen, anything, any drama or anything. And my mom's like, well, just call your Aunt Lisa. She lives right down the road. So my aunt lived like right on the main road coming from Springfield into Cross Plains, just maybe a couple miles down the road, like 5 minutes it takes maybe. So she's like, call your Aunt Lisa, have her take you. So she did. And my aunt came to pick them up, took them to the ER that night, North Crest Medical in Springfield, which isn't too far. And that's where Adriana was born. And they went and run some tests, and Adriana had an infection. And a lot of people say it's a UTI. It was not a UTI. We didn't have the medical records for years and years and years, and so couldn't confirm this. But I got them in the past couple of years, and they say that she had vaginitis, which that infection can be caused by a couple different things. It's kind of like you go to the doctor and you've got, any like a respiratory infection, and they're like, okay, well, that can be caused by there's many different viruses that cause that, right? So I say that just to say that what I'm about to say, it sounds alarming sometimes, and of course we have no way to confirm it now because Adriana is not here. But after they leave the ER in the wee hours of the morning, my mom says like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, they were there for a couple hours. Jennifer calls my mom on the way home and says she has an infection. And the nurse told me that it is not commonly seen in young children like this, and that it is more commonly seen in sexually active adult women. So my aunt is in the car with her. My aunt was also there, heard that conversation. I haven't been able to speak to that nurse, and there isn't any further testing done on Adriana. There were no reports as far as any abuse or anything like that. I know that medical professionals have to report that sort of thing. There was nothing. There was a follow-up appointment the next day on Tuesday with Adriana's pediatrician. So I guess it was kind of like, and I'm guessing, so I guess it was kind of like after the ER visit, if she's still not feeling well tomorrow, take her for her follow-up appointment to a pediatrician, get her in to see her pediatrician. So Jennifer called her grandmother, her Granny Wicks, and she was very close to her. That's her dad's mother, because Jennifer's dad and my mom have been separated for years, and he's remarried. He lives in Manchester, and Jennifer has 3 other sisters on that side of the family. But her grandmother also lives in Springfield. And that's where her family, the Wicks family, is from. And so she calls her granny, and her granny comes to pick her up and takes her to the pediatrician. She goes to the pediatrician. As far as I know, the pediatrician just told her, it's not common, but it can be from like wearing a wet diaper too long and things like that. So there, again, was no report of that to any officials or anything like that, and no additional testing. Of course, the next day is when things start to heat up in the Benton home. And so, we can just kind of think about, like, if we were able to have those additional tests, like, potentially there could have been something going on, and that's one of the theories in our case, So, and I don't know what law enforcement has. Of course, in Tennessee, there are no cold cases. There are no cold case units, anything like that with the TBI or local authorities in the sheriff's office. So our case has remained active and open for 20 years and is not considered cold or closed. So they basically work leads as they come in. So I don't know what they have, and they don't tell me because it's still active. So on Wednesday, March 24th, this is the last day that anyone on my side of the family speaks to Jennifer that I can confirm. So my mom doesn't talk to her during the day. My mom is at work. She comes home from work that evening and starts, doing the nightly things. Me and my other sister at home, so I'm sure she made dinner, all the normal things, and starts getting ready for bed, starts to lay down, and our phone rings at the house, and it's Jennifer. She's calling from Joey's cell phone, and she has herself locked in Joey and Jennifer's bedroom. And my mom gets on the phone with her. My sister gives the phone to my mom and says, Jennifer's upset. She's crying. So my mom takes the phone, and my mom remembers hearing yelling in the background through the door, like hearing someone yell at her through the door or at someone else. I'm not sure. Can't really hear what they're saying, but she asked Jennifer, like, what's going on? She's like, well, there's just a lot of fighting going on tonight. Like, they're just being mean to me. Joey's mom is calling me a worthless mother, saying that, Joey doesn't need to be taking care of Adriana like she's his father. She even threw mine and Adriana's dinner out the back door of the kitchen and said, you can eat your food off the ground like dogs do. So there was just like a lot going on that night. Now, what exactly they were fighting about, I don't have that information. In the last couple of weeks, I've heard some things from different family members and whatnot of the Benton family on what potentially that could be. But I don't know exactly what they were fighting for. My mom doesn't remember Jennifer saying specifically what they were fighting about, other than her not liking Jennifer and not liking Joey pretending to be Adriana's father and the baby crying so much because they were trying to sleep train her, which if anyone has children, they'll know sleep training is not easy. Adriana was only 2 at the time, which is, in my opinion anyway, kind of early to sleep train, but Joey had made Adriana like this little toddler bed. She wasn't in her crib. And so they were trying to teach her to sleep in her own room, in her own bed. And my sister would, like myself and probably like many other mothers that listen to this, she would break down and be like, okay, just come in bed with me, baby, cuddle up, snuggle up with me. So they were trying to teach her to sleep in her own bed that night too. So Adriana was basically crying herself to sleep. And my mom's like, well, where's Adriana? And she's like, she's in the other room, in her room. Joey's in there with her, passed out. And he was staying in there with her, so she wasn't alone, because he could withstand her crying. Like, he didn't break down as much, like Jennifer didn't bring her back in the bed. So my mom's like, okay, Jennifer, this isn't really the best night to be sleep training with all this going on. And my mom could hear the baby, screaming and crying in the background. She's like, go get her, bring her in the room with you. I'll stay on the phone. So my sister walks in the other room, grabs Adriana, brings her back into her room, and Adriana quiets down. And my mom just remembers, like, some of the last words Jennifer said to her was, she was like, oh, Mom, like, that's all she wanted was me. She's already starting to go to sleep. And my mom could, like, hear Adriana, like, whimpering on the call and just goes to sleep on her chest. And my mom's like, well, Jennifer, do you need me to come and get you? Like, are things that bad? And Jennifer's like, no, I'm an adult mom. You're not welcome here. I'll call you tomorrow. And my mom's like, okay, I'll talk about everything. Call me if you need me. And that was the last time my mom talked to Jennifer. So everything kind of heated up after, the doctor's visits earlier that week. And so, I just feel like there potentially could have been more testing, but we just never were able to. So that March 24th, 2004 was the last time that my mom spoke with Jennifer on the phone. So that's what I mean by anyone on my side of the family. But the next day is kind of the day. On March 25th, 2004 is the day that I believe something happened to my sister and my niece, and the day that they were no longer here. And the details of this day I can get, like, I can kind of go off, so I'll try and, like, summarize it, and then if you have further questions, just let me know. But So March 25th, 2004, it was Thursday. Joey went to work that day. He worked in construction, in the construction field for a friend of his dad's. A lot of Joey's friends and like my cousin worked for the same guy. They just hired all these young guys, that were, not in college and straight out of high school, like to come and work for them, teaching them the trade. So they were working in Franklin, Kentucky, which is not very far from Springfield. I think maybe like a 30-minute drive. But he had to get a ride from my cousin that day because his truck was in the shop. So Joey had a little Ford Ranger truck that he drove most of the time. And then if he had Jennifer and Adriana with him, he would drive his parents' Ford Explorer. They had a black Ford Explorer. So anytime I remember ever seeing them, they were driving that Explorer. And whenever, at this time, I just want to make sure everyone knows, like, his truck was in the shop. It was broken down. So he had to get a ride from my cousin to work to Franklin, Kentucky. In the middle of the day that day, Jennifer and Adriana are home at the Benton home in that same little house where they were fighting the night before. I don't know who was home with her that day, but Jennifer makes a phone call at around 11 o'clock that day to her dad. And her dad, Jennifer was a daddy's girl, by the way. Even though she lived with me and my mom her whole life, she was very close to her dad's side of the family and her granny and granddaddy who lived, not far from where they disappeared. But she called her dad. He lives in Manchester, south of Nashville, and I don't know where he was that day. I honestly haven't had a detailed conversation with him yet, but we've been in contact in the last couple weeks and plan to do that. But she called him and was on the phone with him for about 30 minutes in the middle of the day, which Joey and everyone that knows Jennifer would say that's not a common thing for her to call him in the middle of the day. She would normally call him like nights and weekends, but they were on the phone for like 30 minutes and she's telling him all of the things that had happened the night before, similar to the call with my mom. And she says on this call, like, "I'm scared, Dad." And he's like, "Well, what do you mean? Of who?" And she says, "Of Joey's mom. She's acting weird." So at that moment in time, I don't know if she just meant in general she's acting weird from like the night before, or if Joey's mom was home from work that day. Jennifer had told my mom that Cindy was off work on vacation that week. And I know that Cindy and Joe, which is Joey's mom and dad, had another kind of court hearing thing going on with apparently someone had stolen something from them. So I know they were at a couple court dates according to them. But when she said she's acting weird, it just kind of made me think, like, is she home with her that day and she's acting weird? Does she just mean from the night before? I'm not sure. And in the middle of their phone call, someone interrupts Jennifer on the call with her dad, and she says to this person, "Stop, I'm talking to my dad." So someone's in the house with Jennifer and Adriana. He remembers hearing the TV in the background and the baby. And then this person approaching, he says, sounds like a woman's voice. And the only other woman that lived there at the time was Joey's mom, Cindy. Joey does have a sister who did not live there at the time. It's a possibility she could have been visiting that day. I'm not sure. So this is happening at home. And while this is happening, Joey's at the work site and he gets a call. Someone from home. I don't know if that is his mom, his dad, or if it's Jennifer, but someone calls him at the work site, middle of the day. I don't know the exact time because I don't have phone records, but calls him and says, "You got to get home right now." So he goes up to the foreman on the job and is like, "I got to go, family emergency." So he goes to my cousin who drove him to work and says, "Dude, we got to go right now. Let's go." So my cousin takes him home. And I've spoken to my cousin recently in the last couple of years. Our family throughout all of this has had like a huge falling out. Like my cousin and his mom don't speak to my side of the family at all because my cousin was such close friends with Joey at the time and continued hanging out with him after the fact, after the girl's disappearance. And so there was just kind of like a huge divide in our family. But I have since talked to my cousin, and he says he doesn't remember that ride home, like what was said. He doesn't even remember if he drove him all the way home or if, you know, Joey got a ride with someone else back over there once they got back to my cousin's house. He doesn't remember the logistics and specifics of that day. And so that kind of sucks. But he remembers him walking up to him, family emergency, gotta go. And just my own personal perspective, and, you know, a lot of people that follow our case is like, if someone walks up to you and says there's an emergency, you know, we got to go, especially if it involves your own livelihood and your money, you know, and your schedule. Like, you would ask questions on the drive home, like, is everything okay? You know, what happened? Do you need anything? You know, but he just doesn't remember any of that. And it's been 20 years. So he says he's sure it's in his original statement, but he can't recall. So Joey gets home, and this is like the moment I want to just make known that everything after the phone call with her dad, I can't confirm. And so everything after this is hearsay to me, and law enforcement. So my aunt remembers having a job interview that day around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and she says that Jennifer called her and tried to go into tell her everything that happened the night before, same thing as her dad. But she had very little time. She was going into this job interview. So she said, hey, we'll talk about it later, but if you need to come to my house, which again is just less than 5 minutes away, right down the road, just come to my house. I'll leave a key out for you on the deck and the grill. So she remembers leaving a key for Jennifer. I don't know if that phone conversation happened. I haven't gotten phone records and been able to confirm that with law enforcement. Of course, they won't tell me, but my aunt remembers that specifically. So everything after potentially that phone call with my aunt at 1 o'clock on Thursday, March 25th, 2004, is completely hearsay and his side of the story of what happened. I don't know if that emergency phone call that he got home from work that day, I don't know if that was my sister calling and she was upset because whoever was home was bothering her and fighting with her, and she was like, come home, I need your help with this. I don't know if what happened to my sister and niece had already happened and they were calling him home for that reason. So that's kind of where everything I know stops. Everything after that is conversations that my mother had with Joey and his parents. So after that day, on Thursday, my mom did not hear from Jennifer on Thursday after their call Wednesday night, even though she said she would call, and she didn't, but she did talk to her dad. So on Friday, my mom starts getting concerned at work. She hasn't heard from my sister. And she comes home from work and she starts calling other family members. Have you heard from Jennifer? Have you heard from her? And everyone's saying, no, I haven't, which is super uncommon for my sister because she's at home all day with the baby. You know, anyone who is a stay-at-home mom or watches children can just tell you, like, that's a lot on an adult. Like, you need adult interaction. So my sister would call anyone who would talk to her cousin Ashley, her granny, my aunt, my mom, everybody, and just talk, you know. So it was strange for her not to call anyone, and my mom started to get concerned, and one of the people she called was her granny, Wicks, and she said, well, if you hear from her, tell her to call her mom, you know. So my mom's starting to get late, and then she gets a phone call back from Granny Wicks, and Granny says, Kathy, something's wrong. Jennifer's missing. No one can get in touch with her.
If you possess any valuable information regarding this case, please note that a reward of $25,000 is available for anyone who has any leads. To share these leads, please get in touch with the Robertson County Sheriff's Department at 615-384-7981. You can also show your unwavering support by following Justice for Jennifer and Adriana Wicks on social media platforms such as Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, which I've linked in the show notes. Additionally, there's a GoFundMe page set up to aid the investigation that you can contribute to. Lastly, to demonstrate your support for the search of the Benton property, you can sign the petition, which is also linked in the notes. If you enjoy this podcast, consider supporting it on Patreon for $5 a month, where you get ad and sponsor-free episodes, or make a one-time contribution through Buy Me a Coffee. If you don't want to spend any money, you can also leave a 5-star review where you're listening right now. Thanks for listening to the Missing and Unexplained podcast.